Good morning, everybody. Let's do an audio test. Can you hear me? If you can hear me, there's a little at the bottom of the microphones on the back, there's a little button to be pressed to turn them on. It's on the underside, probably. Very small.
Mine's already on.
All right, can we get an audio test? Somebody speak into the mic for me.
Yes.
Linda, are we ready? Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the April meeting for the St. Mary's County Library Board of Trustees. We have a quorum here, so we can call the meeting to order. First, let's go around and introduce ourselves. My name is Tressa. I'm the current chair of the board. Am I right?
Judith Gwynn, treasurer.
John Walters, member.
Sharon Fitzsimmons.
Good morning, Michael Dunn, trustee.
Dorothy Waters, trustee.
And John has stepped out for a moment.
He'll be back.
Okay, so first order of business is approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Approval of the March minutes. Everyone have a chance to look over the March minutes.
Move to approve the March minutes as written.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? A motion passes as well. Approval of the monthly expense
Would
ledger.
it be possible for us to move the celebrations up because we have a guest here?
Oh, certainly. Let's go with the celebrations.
We have several this morning, and we have 3 hip hip hoorays that's for staff, and the first is for Christine Bigman, who is at Leonardtown. Thank you for your dedicated work during the Maryland 250 grant. So as you may have seen advertised out in our monitors in the various areas, we are working with Piscataway Tribe to do 2 programs of interest for First American. And this is a grant from the Maryland 250 to do those programs. So we're very grateful for Maryland 250 for that grant. And thank you so much for Christine for getting this grant that will allow Piscataway artists and historians to present here at the library. We're able to offer our community the opportunity to learn about the art and culture of the people who were here before us and continue to flourish this day. Thank you so much, Christine. The next one is for Andy Tidings, who did an awesome presentation at Kids Are Customers, showing how important our smallest patrons are to our system and our dedication to them. That was a statewide program. And one for our very own Amy Ford here today. Thank you, Amy. I'm going to ask you to come on up and get it. We occasionally at the library do have health crises that occur. It is a public area. And we had one of these here at Lexington Park, and Amy and her staff were able very calmly and carefully to handle that. So Amy, congratulations. Thank you so very much. You want to say?
We work with a really great and collaborative group here. Our staff are awesome. They just jump into action and they make things happen. This is really on behalf of all of our staff here. So thank you.
Next, we are celebrating National Volunteer Month. And so we'd like to say thank you to all our volunteers who help here at the library. Maryland code restricts certain activities. They can't do something that a paid librarian would typically do. But they do help out immensely with many different things. And so we're very grateful to our volunteers. So at Charlotte Hall, we have Linda Ricci, Jasmine Hoddle, and we have teen volunteers, Jessica Siao, Sophia Siao, and Miriam Eunice. From Lexington Park, we have Patrice Ryan, who's been volunteering for over 10 years. We have Barbara Vogentantz, who's been volunteering for 10 years, Barbara Bruner, Jessica Schilder, and Arena Basillo. And at Leonardtown, we have Sally Dees, Terry Daly, and a teen, Abby Pankhurst. And here today is Ann Sanders. Ann, could you come on up, please? So we have a certificate of appreciation for you. Thanks for all you do for the library. There you go. You want to say anything?
Nothing really, just I love the library and thanks for all the work you do.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we will approve the monthly expense ledger. I am not sick, this is allergies.
I move to approve the EALs.
Second.
Okay. For a second?
I will
For a
second.
Thank you, Sharon. Is there any discussion or questions?
On page 2 of 4, down, is it circuit or cricut?
Spelled.
But not cricket like the bug with a K.
It's what we talked about last time. It's a machine.
This is a trade name.
Right.
You're going to see one later. So that is correct spelling of it. Oh, it's not spelled right. Okay, sorry.
Eagle eyes done.
Oh, you're right. Sorry, hold on. That is correct. Circuit renewal.
Well, I didn't really look at it. That is one of our our IT renewals that we do. We have several different softwares and hardwares that are renewed, and they all come about around this time of the year.
So that is circuit, yes.
Any other questions?
On page 3, fourth from the bottom, the AJE Networks Lexi and Leon AV upgrade for $6,900. Is that a finish with the expense, or is there more coming? Or?
No, there's one more bill, and we're waiting to pay it. I already have it, but I'm waiting to pay it until they are completely done. I think there's still a few minor things that they're working on. So as soon as Lexi and Hall lets me know that AJE has completed the project, I will pay the final bill.
Okay, any further questions? All in favor of passing the monthly expenses? Can't speak. EAL?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes. All right, John Johnson, the Smurler report.
Yes, we had a busy day this past Tuesday.
I was there.
Yeah, you were in for the corporate meeting. Most of it was presentation by Morgan Miller, who's the state librarian. She talked about a couple of wins in the General Assembly and then some of the implications of IMLSD funding, and, including implications for staff development grants. They haven't, no formal notification, as of Tuesday of exactly what would be lost. And then the director, Ashley Teagle, covered some of library's accomplishments during 2024. Talked about the attendances for training so far this year. In our regular meeting, we reappointed Ron Krupe for another term, and we had board officers for the next year. Be Suzanne Darby continuing as president, myself as vice president, and Ron continuing as treasurer. And we adopted the FY 2026 budget. Pay raises include 3% merit and 2% COLA. And we expect the new contract for Stat Courier, replacing Hub City, to be signed this week. I haven't received an update since Tuesday, but looks like that was close to being finalized. So we wouldn't have services lapse shipping between the libraries. And our board retreat was with Greenway Strategy. And they went over the framework or the strategic plan. It's not finished, but the framework for it is in place after a series of interviews with directors and branch managers and other staff, different teams within the 3 libraries. So it lists the priority outcomes, strategic themes, and the objectives for each theme. And my personal observation was that all the themes dealt in one way or another with connections. And then we'll discussing the full plan after some more work in June.
Great, thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Now I need to go backwards and the treasurer's report to you. Sorry, I skipped over you.
That's all right. Okay, so we have a couple different items today. I'm gonna start, we passed out some documents we just got this morning. They're more informational, not asking for a decision, but this is so you have some background. I'm gonna call it the older existing Vanguard account that had the Rudolph fund, the internship fund on it. And then we've created a new account for some technical reasons with Vanguard, which was correct. We did create a new account for the OPEB fund. It was kind of technical. But I wanted to cover the old funds first. So what you're going to see here is, I just wanted to get an understanding of what the money is for. Okay, so if you look at the memo that starts off 2 issues, like a little just page, okay, you can read this at your leisure. It goes over the establishment of the fund. Now, this is not a primary source. This is a previous president that wrote this up. We have some primary source documents, but not a lot, very sketchy. But what I wanted to bring your attention to was the second page, page 2, the second paragraph says the important takeaway. The important takeaway of these funds is a compilation of multiple gifts with no attachment. There's no required use or condition. All the decisions on both funds are made by a prior board, even the Rudolph account. Consequently, a current board can decide on future use of funds. So our hands are not tied on either of these funds. I'm not asking for a decision right now.
So,
Okay,
this type of microphone has a range of about 4 inches. If you think this microphone needs to be 4 inches from your face when you talk into it, and it's also highly directional. So it's not going to pick it up if you talk into the side. It has to be pointed right at you.
that's okay. So as I was saying, our hands are not tied with these funds, either one. And we don't need to make a decision today. It's something to think about. The Vanguard fund that's loosely tied to books and expenses has been sitting rather dormant for a number of years. I don't think since I've been here, we've made a decisions on using it. And the intern fund we use annually for intern. Now, both these funds are held in bonds. That decision was made years ago. So basically there is very little growth on these funds. They do talk about using the growth and leaving the principal alone. Well, that's impossible because there's no growth with bonds. I mean, very little growth, 1%, 2%. So we've been tapping these funds. We don't have to keep them. We can spend them down to zero, invest some in the market, look for growth and go back that direction. I'm not asking for a decision, but just discussion. Something we should be thinking about this year is what is the purpose of these funds? I believe we should have a purpose delineated for these funds so the board can stay on track, that nobody kind of questions our decision making. If you look, let's see, the next, there's an MOU document, says November 2009 on it. That seems to establish the Rudolph Fund for the interns. You can kind of read at your leisure. So there is some establishment to those funds. But again, board decisions can be overwritten by future boards. Doesn't tie our hands saying it can't be anything else. Then I gave you a printout. So this is the new, the Vanguard with the big 79,000 on top. Kind of what it looks like. This is what I look like when I go on, well, I see when I go online. Now that 79,000 is for both funds. You drop down the far left column under performance, ending balance, 68,000. That's the general Vanguard fund for books and expenses. That's what we have today. And if you look one column to the right, you can see the growth is 1.4%. Again, we're in bonds. So no loss to the market here, yay, but no growth over all the years either. And I guess that was a decision the board made at some point just to secure these funds. But we don't have any growth. So we're spending it down. If you go way to the end, and I just want you to see what I see. You can see it was at $125,000 10 years ago. And you can see there have been a few withdrawals over the years. And I suppose if we look back in our records, we could find what those were for. I don't know. So this is just to give you background so that you fully are aware of the status of the funds, how they're invested, and any or all or no purpose assigned to them. Any thoughts on that?
Judith, thank you for going through the archives and laying this out. I think when I look at the 2009 memo and then this 2021 document from Jim Hanley, a previous president, I don't see, to me, like the Rudolph Fund seems clearly earmarked for interns. You know, and I'll say, you know, Lorraine Glidden, she used to be the provost at St. Mary's College. She is still around. Bob Paul, whose name is also here, is a former faculty member. So they're still around. And I guess my other question was on the Vanguard statement, if the general Vanguard fund is this 68,000, is the difference, is this 11,000? Does that reflect Rudolph?
Yes,
Okay.
I just had a little trouble printing that out yesterday.
Got it.
So yeah, I can bring it next month or I'll email it to you. It's about 11,000, the intern fund, the Rudolph Fund. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing all this.
So, I mean, you're right in this, if you look at the 11/11/21 document, the second paragraph, page 1, just says in 1988, the minutes designated the purchase of essential communication books, periodicals, computer hardware, software. So at that time, in 1988, the board was determining this is what we think we should use the money for.
Mhm.
It doesn't stand, it's not hard and fast.
Mhm.
But we have an asset there that we should have a plan for. And if you vote the plan is to do nothing, then we do nothing, or we have a plan to spend it down, we can, or we could use it for a different purpose. But it's been kind of languishing for quite some time. So again, something to think about. If you have thoughts on it or ideas.
Just a little bit more background. It used to grow from unearmarked donations to the library, directly to the library. So somebody just come in and say to one of our branches, here's a donation, and they didn't say what it was for. That money would go to the this fund. And it's still the case that if we were to get an unearmarked donation, but we just don't tend to, people come in and say, okay, here's money, I want it to go to, and they say specifically what they want it to go to. So that goes into restricted funds that the library has. The other reason why, of course, is that we now have a foundation. And so people are giving money to the foundation, and we're being as active pretty much as we can about fundraisers and getting the word out about what we can do. And the foundation now has a Vanguard account as well. So I think that would be the reason why you're not seeing a lot of growth here the last, call it 7 years anyway.
No donations,
Yeah,
Yes, yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
right?
It looks like hasn't been a withdrawal from the fund since 2021. It looks like the recent withdrawals have all been, September, October timeframe. Did you find any reason for that?
Yes, that's for the intern.
Okay,
Yeah,
Specifically,
it's-
okay.
Well, it depends on what you're looking at. If you're looking at, this document,
yes.
so intern shouldn't show on this one. This is just the general fund. No, I don't know what those are for. But this should only be showing that general purpose fund.
I think the board used to pay for some children's programming in the summer, and that may be what that is.
But typically, we would know the final amount for the intern about that time and ask for the reimbursement then as well.
But this is not the Rudolph Fund.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
just, so, and again, on the 11/11/21 document, end of page 2, they talk about transferring this over to the foundation, the FOL. No, sorry. There's a difference, right?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
It says the foundation. I'm not advocating we do that. I don't know. I don't know what the benefit would be. But somebody at one time in 21 proposed that we move all this money, including the Rudolph Fund, over to the foundation and let them handle it.
Yeah.
And then you wouldn't need a treasurer anymore.
Right.
So.
Yeah, that was the reasoning behind it. That's why I agreed to be treasurer, because we were gonna get rid of it. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a possibility. We're not using it, but I think we're also not looking at it as a resource that can be used.
Uh-huh.
And one idea would be to go to the director and say, okay, give us a list of some things you need this year, you don't have funding for, submit us a list. We'll go through it and we can vote on some, all, none, and use it. We also have to be mindful, we do that, we're gonna spend it down. And are you okay with that? There's not really a corpus or principle to be maintained when you're in bonds. We're gonna spend it down. Unless you choose to invest it, we move it over and we get some growth. And then we're dealing with another investment issue, which I'm not really looking forward to.
I mean,
It's not that much money. It's $68,000. I think it's an asset that we should seriously consider using. This is an asset we can use at this time when we have a little bit of a crunch, that we can get to anytime we want to. Anytime during the year, we want to replace something or supplement, we can just go to this and use it.
I mean, that sounds reasonable to me. Either use it or put it in a situation where it can grow more effectively. My only other thought, though, would be to make sure that we do have money for interns for the foreseeable future, right? We've talked in a previous meeting about how the Rudolph account is going to run down in the near term. So I do think we should think about internships and sort of what that is going to look like in the years to come.
Right? And there's nothing to restrict us, as happened years ago, to transfer some of this to the Rudolph/intern fund, if we choose to do that, and supplement that fund. And at that time, we probably should invest it, because again, it's in bonds, there's no growth there. If we
Yeah.
put in $20,000 on top of the 11, we'd have 31. We get 10% growth, we might be able to live with that and not touch the principal, some number like that. So that's an idea.
But right now, with the volatility of the market, a bit concerned about that.
It's a great time to buy, though.
It
Currently-
is, actually.
Currently, we have
sure
4
yet.
interns a year.
Yeah.
The foundation pays for one, the friends pay for one. We use library funds for one, and then the Rudolph Fund pays for one. So if you're talking about losing one from the board, somebody else would have to pick that up. We could get along with three, but four is ideal. There's one at the mobile branch and one at each of the other branches then.
Judith, I don't know if you came across this in your work, but somewhere I came across a notation, it might have been in a set of minutes, that Jim Hadley had explored any possible downside ramifications to transferring those funds out to the foundation. And according to what I read, the response was, no, you can do that based on how they came to the library in the first place. In other words, it wasn't government money that you were now moving over to the private sector.
That's an interesting question. I would probably go to council with that.
So it's
I
in
see
all
this as
that
government,
paper
I mean, I see
somewhere.
this as government funds right now. It's not a private asset, so I think we'd have to go to council. Yeah,
I think it was the
we don't have
source.
a grant, we don't have grant making authority. So again, things we're gonna have to think about this year, try to get this settled. But I kind of like the idea of if we supplement the intern fund enough where it could be self-sustaining. And then you're not gonna run out of an intern, in theory.
I like that idea also.
And then 3,000 to 4,000 a year for the one intern. We probably would need at least 30,000 in there, and we have 11 right now.
Mhm.
So,
I definitely want to keep the internship in place. That way, it's an
otherwise, in
opportunity.
about 4 years, we don't have any more intern money.
Yeah.
Or less.
Right.
Maybe 3 even. So, so maybe let that marinate, talk about it next month. Now looking at the question of, can we even transfer money over to the foundation or the Friends?
So I just looked up the 10/20/21 and 9/20/21 withdrawals just to see. The one for 3750 was for a children's program that the board donated to, and then the other one for 1100 was intern.
Hmm.
Go back and probably find most of those withdrawals if you need me to. Just FYI.
Are we still going to keep a certain balance in this fund though, even though we're talking about moving certain funds over?
Well, that's,
Or-
that's a decision we'd have to make is, do we want to keep a balance? Like I said, in the bonds, there's virtually no growth. So as we spend it down, you can see it went from 125 down to 68. Because we're spending it down, there's no growth on this right now. So, but if you keep a balance in there, I don't see the purpose because there's no growth. If we did the intern fund, we'd have to invest it in something so that we could get growth. Right? We couldn't leave it in bonds.
Right.
There's no point leaving, there really is no principal because in bonds, because there's just so little growth on it.
I mean, that could leave us possibly, if we take this 79 and we say, call it 80, 30 is for the internship fund, and then that leaves 50 that, maybe Michael could think of like a wish list of expenses that the 50 could be paid for as a one-time thing, or else we invest it, or, with those kinds of numbers, maybe that would help ground the conversation a little more. But I think this is a tough thing, but we need to sort of make sure we're making progress on it, as you're saying.
Yeah.
As we've noted to you before, we have had many interns eventually become full-time library employees, and I'd really like us to be able to continue that. It helps us immensely in the summer, and it is kind of like growth for the future. People,
Oh, yeah.
introduced to a library career, decide they like it, come back and stay.
Okay, so basically we're gonna kind of think about this and come back and discuss a little bit more.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's gonna take some thought and, like I said, let yourself, come up with any possibilities. It's kind of open. We don't have, our hands are not tied with this money.
Yeah.
Okay, on to the OPEB, excitement. So we've been working steadily with Vanguard.
Judith, I'm sorry, are we gonna hold that till our old?
I'd rather just do it now if you don't mind. Okay.
Fine with me, everybody else, okay?
So I'll give you some background. So we've been working with Vanguard transferring the money over from Charles Schwab. We submitted our last documents on, was it Monday, Michael?
Yeah.
Monday,
No, Tuesday,
what-
Tuesday.
Tuesday. So actually waiting on a final approval. You go through a lot of steps, and Vanguard has several layers of security and approval. So it's kind of like at a high level of approving the account now and transferring the trust money over. When you use the word retiree benefits, they get very excited about that. And there's a lot of laws to protect retiree money, and said it's not actually for the retirees, but so we're working on that. So Belinda and I will both have access to the account. That's how we set it up. We signed our lives away a few days ago. But I have a documented process now so that we can memorialize this for the next person. That said, I will tell you all, the board has done a very poor job of documenting its actions. Not necessarily this group, but there is so little audit trail on this fund, these funds, and how they've been handled. It is a poor, give it a D. So we need, as a board, need to be cognizant of documenting and archiving our decision-making process and documents. I'm working with Belinda on everything I have. I feel that might be something that needs to be assigned to a board member to make sure, and it's not just regarding Vanguard, but everything we do, like the OPEB decisions, other documents that we've signed, need to be safeguarded and archived. That's our responsibility. Belinda can only do what we give her, or the library staff. But there's not a good trail on who's been handling this account over the last 20 plus years. So as a former auditor, that just freaks me out. Okay. I mean, the first thing they're going to say is who's been handling the money. And we perhaps don't know on every transaction what's happening. So that's a wake-up call for the board. We need to be cognizant of what we're doing and we're documenting things.
Judith, I'm sorry, are these documents that like exist and are produced in the normal course of business and we haven't been saving them? Or is this like a new record we need to keep? Or is it things that are not in the minutes?
Mostly things that are produced normal course of business.
Okay.
Like who has authorization to the account? And this account's been around a long time.
Mhm.
So, and we know that we don't have all those documents in place.
I see.
So-
Okay.
And decision-making, like, last month we voted to allow myself as treasurer and a staff member assigned by the director access to the account. So that had to be carefully documented in the minutes
Mhm.
and then uploaded to our financial files, probably cross-filed, so that financial file says, yes, it was authorized, the board authorized these people to have access. So most of them are documents that are produced anyway, but not necessarily kept.
Thank you.
And they are kept in such a deep file, like, I don't know how far minutes go back, but how do you find it?
Minutes go back a long, long time. So, and in the course of trying to help Judith find things, it has been difficult because let's just say the minutes in some past cases were not necessarily very full. So we don't know necessarily exactly what a decision might have. We know what a decision was, but we don't know the discussion. We don't know the details.
Well, and the other part
That's
of
been
that is it's a document you're having to read every single month to find detail that was, what, 15 years ago?
Yeah,
That's-
and you do have to search
Yeah.
across literally decades to try to
Right.
find these things. So it's been interesting.
But that's been rectified because we have excellent minutes now. And we have a process for amending and clarifying our minutes if something's not in there. And that's how we need to read is, did we make a decision? Was it clarified in the minutes? Did it? So, okay, so we have our 1.52, I think as of March 30th, $1 million in a cash account. It's not earning anything right now. It's sitting in cash. It's a very temporary hold from one to the other. And as I said in my email, with what's happened the last week, we have a couple of choices. We could let it sit in cash. We might be able to put it into a mutual fund that would earn 3-4%. You can dump the whole thing right back into the market, next week, as soon as I'm allowed to do that. or we could space out the investments over some short period of time, hoping to not capture any one huge loss. However, after yesterday's performance, this is my opinion, I am not a financial analyst, is I feel a little more comfortable that this is going to bounce around this number from 38, 39, 40. It's going to bounce up and down a little bit. We probably have got some gains from when we cashed out 4 weeks ago to now. We have some gains. So basically, we sold at 42, we're buying at 39. So our money just grew. There's no guarantee. This is going to be our best decision. We could buy at 39 and tomorrow drops down to 35. But this statement is absolutely true. The market always recovers. The market always recovers. The worst market fail in history was 1987. People don't remember that. It wasn't 1929, it was 1987. And we all recovered. And the market was less than 10,000 then. And then we went to 42. So it was scary. I mean, it was almost a 30% fall in 1987. So it is definitely volatile. So anyway, thoughts. What are you comfortable doing? The market tip last night was like 39 and change.
Yeah. I mean, I do think now my inclination would be to go back into the market now. I think, buying low is a good opportunity to do that. But I also want to be cognizant of our role as stewards of the money, and that I think we need to be necessarily perhaps a little more conservative than we might be on our own household budgets when we're dealing with, these kinds of public funds and our responsibilities here. But my inclination would be to get back into the market.
Let's anchor on that point for a minute. Just a straw vote. How many agree with the concept of somehow re-entering the market at this point?
The way you can do it in a partial way?
Well, getting in, the big picture is getting in.
Oh, okay.
All right.
So I see.
All who don't think
4
it's a
out of
good
7.
idea to get in now. Pretty much split.
So what I have seen is that the Buffett indicator says that the market is highly overvalued right now, and that would make it highly volatile. In conjunction with what has been happening in terms of global economics, I see that as also highly volatile. If we were to take the timing on pulling this out, I think was kind of just spectacular. Like that when I got your
Thank you,
email,
Judith.
Judith, I was like, oh my goodness. Because I personally had also taken my stuff and brought it, our retirement funds had brought it back to something less volatile a couple weeks ago, anticipating this kind of volatility. So if we were to go back into the market, I would recommend something that has very, very, very low volatility. I know bonds don't grow, but they typically don't shrink either. And so that would be the only place I would recommend for now until we see a little more stability.
So remember, our Wellington fund that we chose is a 65-35 balance. 65 stocks, 35 bonds, which does give us the protection. The reason we chose Wellington was that very purpose. We're not 100% bonds. It says 65-35. So we would not have taken the losses that happened to the market. And neither do we necessarily get all the gains. And the other thing to remember is, even taking a loss, we don't need this money right away. This is not our college kids account that's going to college next year. I took it out. Yeah. We don't need the money right away. So if there's a loss, we do have time to recover. We don't have any plan in the near future to use these funds. We are nowhere near the level of investment, which is about 80% of the $4 million liability, that we can draw these funds out. So there is time to recover if we were to take a loss.
So I think if we've decided that this money is going into the Wellington funds, then is the question really when we move it from the cash account to the Wellington funds, whether it's tomorrow or in a year? Okay.
Yes.
So my recommendation, given the realities are, we are currently in a very volatile situation. Some of that is politics. Some of that is overvaluation. All right. So I think a middle ground here might be, look at the amount we have available and knowing that if we commit any of it, it's still a 65-35 mix. It's not 100% equities. And take, I'm going to throw a number out, 50% of the gross, put it in the market, and a month from now, assess what we want to do with the remaining 50%. Okay. Now, while that sits on the sidelines, let's not keep it in cash. Let's put it in a money market fund, which currently they're paying pretty much what bonds are paying. Okay. That's one of those dollar a share things when you look at your statement.
That would give us an opportunity to see what happens over the next
To see
month.
what happens.
Yeah.
If we're still concerned, we pass for a month. If we're feeling okay, we grab a piece of the remaining 50% and put it to work. So I'm thinking from first deposit to when we put the last one in, 4 to 6 months.
6 months seems reasonable to me.
It's a slow way to get in the pool, but it works.
Well, it's called dollar cost averaging, and if the market is going up and we've got money on the sidelines, we got to pay more to get in. If it stays down or goes down and it's time to put another slug in, we're buying on the cheap, which will give us more shares to go up later because markets have always come back. You don't know the time. That's the problem with staying on the sidelines too long. Until you're absolutely positively sure that this upline is for real now, you've missed most of it. So I'm thinking 50% now, and at this point, the other 50% over, take your pick, 4 months or 6 months. Either of which we can accelerate or decelerate.
You're
I
saying
agree
like
with that.
revisit it every month and see if we want to put other money in, so.
Agree with that.
Do we have an existing money market account?
Yes, I have not spoken to Vanguard about that possibility. Don's pretty certain we can do that, so I would need permission. That would take a vote from the board. That, I don't know why we couldn't, but I just don't want to, like, for some reason Vanguard comes back weirdly and says, you can't put it in a money market fund. I don't think that would happen.
You're
but I
more
would-
likely to say, what's your authority to do that?
Well, I think we had that now. I think we have that now. So
Or just
I
set
would
some
want to vote
caps?
saying to put in 50% and put the remaining in a money market fund, barring any obstacles to that.
Okay.
But I would do that.
So then, can I make a motion then? To move half of this 1.52 million in the cash account into the Wellington Fund now, and to remove the remaining half of that money into a money market account if we're able to do so. And if we're not able to do so, it can remain in the cash account. And then we can revisit this next month about the remaining funds.
Sounds right to me.
I'll second that.
Right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any abstains? Okay. Now we'll get back to our normal agenda.
Okay, well, we'll begin by looking at the fiscal year 25 budget review, and you have that in your packet. 75% of the year has passed as of the beginning of this month. And again, I'm not going to go through every line here. I'll just make some general comments and ask for your questions on it. The personnel services are at 74%, but you'll see there are some lines there, specifically FICA, that are higher. So we'll be needing to watch this overall. The substitute salary is a little high, but that's sort of expected at this time of year. the COVID hours you voted to take care of or take out of the budget next year. So the one area of concern is the health insurance. And the cause of this rise is primarily people who are eligible entering for us. We won't know for next year until May, when the open enrollment period is, what that amount is going to be. You will be asked to approve a budget in June for next year so that we will have some idea, a better idea of exactly what that amount will be. But remember that if for example, we hire a new full-time employee in the year, the position they go into had not been getting health insurance, and that person coming in is eligible and does, that amount could go up. Now, alternately, if somebody who's full-time leaves who was getting health insurance, the replacement does not, the amount could go down during the year. But my anticipation is that even, and this happens with us on a fairly regular basis, our eligible employees have a spouse on base where the health insurance has been picked up, that instead they'll look where the libraries and say, that's pretty darn solid, we'll do it there instead. So this is hard to predict for next year, but that's the reason why it's high now. And we'll just see for next year. Over on page 2, you'll see that we have a number of utilities that are above 75%. We don't yet know for Leonardtown because those bills tend to lag a bit, but we anticipate that will be an area where we need to have more money next year as well. We have in our budget request to the commissioners, which I will review later, asked for increases in those areas. Looking further down on page 2, the next to last line says staff development. You see it's $15,653, and there's still $12,742 remaining. Remember that number for later today.
Can I ask a question about the staff development budget line?
Yes.
I just don't remember. When you budget staff development, do you budget for everyone to receive the benefits that are allotted to them, or do you budget on average of how many people have actually used it in previous years?
Well, it's complicated for reasons that we will discuss later, but we have been getting $20,000 a year in LSTA funds for staff development. So we know that number has been stable and is now going to go away. But other than that, we just look at the expenses for this current year. What has it been? Say, okay, roughly above that LSTA money, do we think we need? And this supports trainings, it supports conference attendance. So we'll be looking at all of that for next year, but that's how we kind of come up with that number.
That line item specifically is one that I will adjust based on whether or not we have money, or I need to pull it into a different line. And also, we don't specifically like allocate that towards any particular employees. It's just a solid number. I start with a total of 20, I think it was 20,000 is what we try to do. But part of that goes to the SRC, which is our staff recognition committee. It's only a couple thousand, but and then I reduce down if I need to pull money into other line items, because we usually have another 20 from the grants, which we have lost in the middle of this year. We have lost that money. So
I'll talk more about that later.
And we won't get it next year. And so what we do for staff development is, as things come up, we kind of look at the history, who's gotten to go to something before, who hasn't. We switch up who gets to go, especially our MLA conference. We really try to be fair with that and split up people who haven't been able to go before. We'll give them a chance. And then there's other small things that we do throughout the year. And it's just based on who we think needs it.
Then there are just general trainings that everybody gets that sometimes cost money. But I want you to remember that $12,000, but $12,000 for a discussion later. On to page 3, we have quite a bit of money encumbered for circulation, so I anticipate spending most of that amount for the year. We do not want to shortchange our books. If you look down at mobile library expenses, you should see those are looking really good. I'm pleased that the mobile library in its first full year, we're getting a more accurate idea of the costs. And it wasn't quite as much as we were anticipating. So that's looking good.
Michael, is any of that due to the fact that there's been a reallocation of the stops?
No, really. This is all just the vehicle itself for the most part.
And that you're
you
running
see
it,
that the programs really are not particularly costly. We've got $3,000 budgeted for the programs, which that would be where stops, differences of stops might play into it. So not really. We're still out on the road quite a bit. If there's any reduction at all, it will be, as we'll discuss in a couple of minutes, the fact that January through March was a very harsh weather period. And we had quite a few days when the mobile library was simply too hazardous to be out on the road. It is very heavy. It has many thousands of pounds of books in it. So we don't want it hitting an icy spot. And there were days when, the county said, stay off the road. And when that happens, we do. So over on page 4 under technology, you'll see money's mostly spent, but that's not unusual for this time of year because a lot of that's front loaded. Looking at page 6, the very top, you see St. Mary's County funding. So far collected this year is 67%. I just draw that to your attention. We'll get this money. I'm not worried about that. I draw it to your attention because sometimes that money is slow to come in and it doesn't necessarily hit the schedule that we were given. And what that often means is we, as it were, borrow against the unexpended fund balance, knowing that it's going to go back in. But that has happened twice this year. And so sometimes that money's just a bit slow to arrive. Down farther on that page, you see the interest in the MLGIP account. We had anticipated, say, 15,000 at the start of the year, and we've already taken in almost 20, so that account is earning some nice interest for us. We are putting that directly into the budget. Other than that, I think what I would like you to take a look at is on page 10. The total fund balance available minus restricted is, so that's, as it were, unexpended fund balance right now, $491,000. And our monthly expenses, and this will be why I'm bringing it up for you, we're going to talk about this later, are about $454,000. So we've got a little bit over 1 month in an unexpended fund balance. The county maintains 15%. If we were to do that, we'd be substantially higher, but we'll talk about the unexpended fund balance in a little while here. Any questions about this particular report for you?
this PNC Treasury account, does that have any appreciable earnings going on there?
No, it's a checking account.
The checking account, so no.
Why don't we go with money market checking?
You can't, funds in there. I go all the way down to the bare minimum every couple months to pay salaries and all of our bills. This is what we need as a business at the moment.
So there's a minimum on a money market checking.
There usually is for our another organization I'm the treasurer for, it's at least 5,000 a month. If you don't have that, you start paying out. And so I anticipate that it would be the same for this. Other questions? All right, well, then let's go ahead and look at the third quarter stats and then the stats for the year so far. I do remind you that January through March was a very cold period, and we had several days when the library had to close, and that is reflected in the quarterly stats. Actually, for circulation, for the quarter, it was down 1%, and for the year, it's down 4%, so we're catching up. And the reason for that is there was a period in the fall and late summer and throughout the fall when we were having trouble getting new books in. It was a publisher issue. And now we're catching up and getting a lot of the newer books in. So that's going to mean that circulation will go up, and I anticipate it going up for the year with one exception, and that is if you look at our Hoopla circulation for the quarter down 19% and down for the year 6%. That's quite deliberate. We have talked about Hoopla being unsustainable, and so we have cut out the most expensive items. And come July 1, we will be sunsetting Hoopla. It has simply become too expensive, and we need that funding, which is primarily provided by the Friends of the Library, for other purposes. We'll talk in more detail come June about exactly what plans for that are. We do have plans for increasing digital holdings at a more reasonable rate.
Looks like Palace circulation is still fairly low.
The Palace is new, and we're trying to get people to switch over to it. It does have content that that Overdrive does not, that Libby does not. You see, however, that although the numbers are low, the percentage is increasing. We are pushing it, but it's a slow process to get it to turn over. But there is a lot of content there. People are just kind of stuck with what they know.
Yeah, I'm listening to an audiobook currently on that platform.
It takes in everything that is in Overdrive and then adds on to it. So, but I anticipate if Palace had been first and we introduced Overdrive, that Overdrive, people would say there's not as much stuff here, and that wouldn't go anywhere. Yeah, it's hard to get people to change digitally.
Can I ask on the circulation, if you have any thoughts on why Charlotte Hall is dropping more than the others?
It's very interesting to look at Charlotte Hall. At the start of this year, they were ahead of everybody else and growing faster than everybody else. Now they're down. So no, I do not know the answer to that. I do know that we have a renovation plan there, and I anticipate circulation growing quite a bit once we do.
There was some road construction in the area. I don't know if that impacted at all, like during like January and February.
And it's going to be horrendous trying to sort out the stoplights across that little median strip. There's a big article in the paper about that.
Yeah, I noticed it on days when I had to work that there's commercial trucks and other commercial vehicles lined up to go across, right there where that gas station is.
Well, you know what? Now that we have a mobile library, maybe the thing to do is take the books on the road so that people don't have to transit that intersection under construction. Add some stops up there.
The question is finding a place quickly that you could establish as a stop that people recognize, but we can certainly try to work on that. am hopeful that we'll catch up on the year on our circulation, but with taking out the hoopla circulation, we may not quite get there, but I think we'll do okay. The rest of the news is all pretty darn good. If you look at an increase in the number of events, now for that quarter, the attendance was slightly down. Again, you'd expect that given the weather conditions, but up overall 9% on the year. So meeting room use down a little bit, again, weather related, but up on the year 8%. Really, in just about all these areas, we are seeing increases over the previous years. And in visitors, especially now the mobile library, because it was not on the road several days, we're looking at a decrease in visitor attendance there. But really, as I say, just about everywhere else, we're looking at nice increases. And if you look at the very bottom of the second page, you'll see that we are still seeing Calvert get the Twin Beach boost. Again, they built a lovely new facility there. It was like 4 times the size of the library they had. It's right on the Chesapeake. So they are growing nicely, and we still need to be doing some catch up, but this quarter was better than previously. So I'm hopeful that we'll close the gap for the year. Questions about that?
I'm surprised that the visitors number on the mobile library is as different as it was from Q3 in 24 and 25. Was it up and running at full capacity last year in the third quarter?
It had just started.
It had just started. Okay.
Yeah, March.
We had a soft opening, and really it wasn't going until April to speak of. There was some activity in March, but it really wasn't doing a lot. You'll see apples to apples better next quarter.
Got it. Thank you.
All right, well, moving on just to a couple of fun things that are happening at the library. I'm not going to cover them all. I may send you this document separately later so you can see it, maybe ask some questions via email. But obviously, budget's very much on our minds right now, and we have been having conversations with the county commissioners and letter writing, and we have had quite a few letters received. And I shared a link for you to take a look at the public comments on the budget, and we saw wonderful comments from library supporters there. So very happy with that, and I'll talk more about the budget process later. We were recognized as the health department's community health champion. I'm going to just pass around some things here. We got a lovely plaque from them. We also got those are for all of you. I need to give you those later. I have a certificate for each one of you for being on the board. The health department gave us a recognition. The county commissioners gave us recognition. The Maryland House of Delegates gave us a recognition, and the Maryland Senate gave us a recognition, all for that. So pass these around and you can take a look at them. And we're very delighted to have received that honor from the health department. We do a lot of cross programming with them, and they come in and into our lobby to promote themselves, and then we have initiatives that we work on with them. So that's been a very lovely thing to get recognized from them. At Charlotte Hall, our branch manager completed the Maryland Library Leadership Institute, and that's going to be really good for developing her skills as a future library leader. We had 2 interesting STEM programs. One was on soap making and pizza playtime. So kids were making their own Play-Doh up there, and that was a really fun program. In Leonardtown, if we were there, you could go see it. The teen area now has some murals in it, and Those have been painted and they're really lovely. So next time you're at Leonardtown, go back to the teen area and look up on the windows and you'll see those. We had Boy Scouts do a project, so we've got now 2 raised beds for our seeds planting on the back patio. At Lexington Park, I'm going to let Amy take over here and tell you about 2 things. Amy, you don't look like you got a...
A couple of things here for Lexington Park. We had a very successful financial literacy fair, which we're super proud of. That is an ongoing initiative with the Academy of Finance at Chopticon and Lexington Park Elementary. We also invite homeschool families in during the day to attend that program. And so we reached 83 third graders with that program, which is in its 5th year now.
To talk about the makerspace equipment
and then,
the UV.
Yes. Oh, and I forgot the UV. Thank you. We have been receiving our maker equipment well, and have some of our really cool things that we're going to be putting out into our makerspace. We have a chomp saw, which is a like a band, but safe for children to use. It's cardboard so that children can create really amazing sculptures, houses, wherever their imagination takes them. We have lots of fine motor skill equipment, including pottery wheels for children, 3D pens, fuse bead kits, which all require a lot of fine motor skills for some of our older kids and families. We are receiving our heat presses, mug presses, our Cricut Venture, which is a cutting machine. It can cut design. We use it a lot for some of our in-house projects, as well as teach the public. We have a laser cutter. It's called a Glowforge. It was too big to bring in here. But we have a lot of our makerspace equipment coming, and we're already planning programs for Lexington Park's makerspace. So until the space is completed, we're just going forward. We're going ahead and doing projects with all of the equipment we've received. And then we have also been working with a local engineer to receive some germicidal UV lamps. They will go into the children's room. The design is being completed right now. And the way that works is that light safely contained within the unit to sterilize the air as it moves through the children's room. That germicidal UV light eliminates viruses, molds, and other kinds of pathogens, things that we don't want circulating around. So we are looking to improve public health. We're looking to improve our employee health. And so we think that it's going to be a really cool feature of our children's room. The University of Maryland is also working with us on educational pieces that will go along with the units to help the public understand how it works and the benefits of using this kind of sterilization in public spaces.
Thank you, Amy. And those units have been donated, and the county has agreed to install them. And the reason why is they were already investigating putting some in. So they're going to use us as a pilot. And what they've asked for is just a report of our total hours worked at Lexington Park and the number of sick leave hours taken. So over the next several years, we'll track that figure and just see to what extent these may be making an impact. But we're looking forward to seeing them installed, and that will be happening over the next several months at some point. Thank you, Amy. We have free-for-all movie screenings today at Leonardtown Library at 2, at Lexington Park on May 2nd at 2, and Charlotte Hall Library Saturday, May 24th at 2. And there's a screening and a discussion of activities, and we're having 75th anniversary kickoff events. Most of those will not be till the fall when the actual 75th anniversary is, but you can get a free t-shirt. Um, Charlotte Hall was this past Wednesday, Leonardtown is April 19th at 1, and Lexington Park is on Saturday, April 26th at 10 a.m. Yes. Sure, thank you. Yes. Charlotte Hall, Lexington Park, Leonardtown, and the mobile libraries have all received grants from St. Mary's County Arts Council. Thank you for the Arts Council. We use those for programming. And we're preparing final work on the TEDCO Makerspace grant application. That will be for $50,000 we're asking for. We have already received $80,000 in funds that are not connected to the federal government for that project. So we will have enough money to do that. We are hoping for the extra 50,000 from TEDCO to get that makerspace sort of in place. Questions about any of that? Lots going on at your library. Let's talk about the fiscal year 26 budget upcoming. Got some good news. The first bit of good news is that the state has finished its budget process, and that small increase that we were expecting has come through. That would be, assuming that it's the amount that we were told in January, an additional $26,256 over this year's amount.
That's the per capita amount?
It's based on a very complicated formula with 14 variables, including railroad miles in a county. I have no idea why. Nobody can tell me. I don't know if they're trying to say, you've got a lot of railroad miles, therefore you're rural, we're going to give you something, or you've got a lot of railroad miles that are public transit, you're urban, we're going to give you money. I have no idea why they do that, but it's primarily per capita, yes. But the relative county wealth also gets factored into that. So we have had counties who suffer from that. You know, they're relatively wealthy and they start losing population, they start losing money. The vast majority of course, to the very heavily populated counties like Montgomery, but that's why we've got SMRLA, is to try to spread state dollars around a bit better. So that's good news. We anticipated possibly being flat funded there. There's better news from the county. So first, when they were having their final budget session to go to the public, they discovered they had an additional $200,000 that they weren't counting on. Now with the state budget being done, they're looking at possibly having $2 million that they had put into a $5 million reserve that they're not going to have to put up towards the state. So as I've explained to you via email, that public, that hearing that's going to, that budget that's going to the public hearing, 2 commissioners voted against it, and a third said that he would if no adjustments were made. They specifically said it was unfair and specifically mentioned the library in that context. We are going into the public hearing flat funded. Now the commissioners have said they'll do something for us, and I'm trusting them that they will. That public hearing is on April 22nd. I'm sure that the schools will be sending folks out, but we have asked our supporters to come out and speak as well. The commissioners are saying, don't get too excited about what you're seeing right now. So we're not creating in any way an adversarial relationship with them. We do want them to know that the library has strong support, and we've had many people reaching out to them. And you've seen some of those comments, lovely comments in support of the library that will be made. I'll go and just thank them for their past support. And after the day of the public hearing, what we'll do is we'll send out an official re-request. It will be our budget that we've already submitted to them. It's $500,000 additional that we're asking for. We're not going to get it, but I hope that we may certainly get more than we're currently allotted. So we just have to see where that all comes down, but there is more money on hand than they were anticipating. So I'm confidently expecting the library is going to get some favorable treatment, and we'll just have to see where they go after the public hearing. They will be making adjustments. And I know that at least 3 commissioners do want to see more fairness involved with that process. They may move some county employee compensation away from the first of the year to January to ensure a more equitable distribution of funding. But we'll see what we get. But I'm really feeling very good about this process at this point.
So when you say flat funded, you mean they're gonna give us exactly what they gave us in 25?
Actually, it's $208,000 less than they gave us this year. They did not include that money, so it's flat funded without that. We have asked for 500,000 more. I'm hoping, I'm not going to tell you a number, but we anticipate having more money next year than we have this year, and we won't have to do the upgrades on the meeting rooms.
And when does that number go back? The next number you said, when our re-request?
The day after the public hearing, I'll be sending that number back to them. They already know what it is, but I'll be sending it again just as an
I mean,
official
I'm
request.
not sure I agree with that strategy. If we're asking for the same exact amount of money, we're not showing any either compromise on our part or prioritizing. If we had to have extra funding for something, what would it be?
Well,
We're not gonna get the whole 500,000. We
we're
could say,
sending in a request for 3.66% of a market adjustment for staff, for a COLA and for a STEP. We're sending in additional funding for the health benefits, the health insurance. We're sending in a request for additional funding for utilities. And we're sending a request for materials, an additional $70,000 for materials. Now, they've already told us in our public budget hearing that that materials money probably ain't going to be forthcoming, but we'll be looking to get the other amounts.
so are you prioritizing them? In the request, are you saying we have these 4 or 5 items, and this is we're presenting them in priority order? The
Yes.
COLA is the first most important thing, maybe the health insurance.
The
Okay, yeah.
staff, the health insurance, and then utilities are 1, 2, and 3.
So they
yes.
can see that we're breaking out.
Absolutely,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
And they already know the amounts. And the county executive already knows the amounts, and the county CFO already know the amounts.
No, as long as they know our
Yeah,
priorities.
But yeah, so they absolutely, they
Yeah.
know our priorities, yes.
That hearing is a unified hearing as opposed to breaking out the school system into a separate hearing.
It is a unified hearing. It's the public hearing for the budget. And we're not the only ones flat funded. The Department of Social Services is, the health department is, various other small agencies are. But the primary one that's currently funded without additions are the schools. And so I anticipate it being rather like last year when it went 3 hours and it was primarily teachers and supporters of the school standing up to ask for more funding. We do want a couple people there. We don't want to, you know, there's a danger of simply getting lost, but I think we do want our voice here, and I always go anyway.
Is this the fiscal year in which we are running on a one-time, I want to say $200,000 or $250,000 addition to the budget?
This year right now is the one that's $208,000.
Was put in, and it was a one-time deal.
One-time deal. That's this year. And next year they didn't give it to us. So
I mean, I've been to these hearings too, and I do think the commissioners notice if we're there. If we're there with our name tags on as trustees, they notice, they know our faces. I speak to them on breaks. I think it makes a difference in the fact our presence. I don't know that we'll get more money, but I encourage everybody to go with your name tags on and show them that the board is there. I mean, we're citizens and we vote just like everybody else. Yeah, anybody can speak. You go in and you sign up and they give you your 3 minutes.
And where on the 22nd will that meeting be held?
it's at Leonardtown High School. It starts at 6 p.m.
It's at 6,
6:30.
or 6:30, you have it at 6:30 on.
I think at 6 p.m. sign-ups start to be able to speak. But I would be there at 6. let's talk things that are not quite so good. Federal funding for libraries. I've emailed to you that the Museum of Library Services, I'm sorry, the Institute of Museum and Library Services has been basically shut down. It is the sole source of Library Services and Technology Act funds, LSTA funds. We have been getting some years substantially more, but about 50,000. So I already told you that there's $20,000 in staff development money that was funding. That's why I brought up that additional 12. So we do have the money to cover the staff expenses we've already done. We had gotten already 13,000 of that 20,000 in staff development money. So we have that 12,000 sitting there that will send the people we'd already said we were going to send through Maryland Library Association conference, for example. So they will not be disadvantaged by that. We will make plans not having that money next year, and that will be reflected in the budget that is presented to you in June. There are 2 lawsuits going on against the administration to restore that funding. Congress could act and restore the funding and the institute itself. I don't think any of these are likely to succeed, certainly not in the near term. So we'll simply plan on not having that funding next year. That's pretty much the direct effect on us. Now, we have funding sources to kind of cover, as I say, what we'd be losing this year. For next year, the one thing we might have to look at would be Palace would be about $2,000. That's so that the app is constantly updated and we have troubleshooting. So that might be one thing we've got to pick up next year, but the expense is very small. Anything else, we may simply have to cut back on travel, conference attendance. We'll just look and see what we can afford. It is likely to have larger impacts in the state that may trickle down to us. So for example, the Library Associate Training Institute that we send all of our library associates to so they can kind of get the real basics of working in libraries and some training is supported by LSTA. The state is planning on finding some funding for that. State library planning on finding some fund for that because it's mandated in the state statute that it exists. The training that 2 of our branch managers went through, which is the Maryland Library Leadership Institute, is subsidized by the LSTA, and we have to see if that's going to be sticking around. Tableau, which is a statistics package that we use substantially in the library, and Sarah's our Tableau expert, so we can track circulation of books, for example, what's circulating, what's not. We can track patterns in attendance. Her statistics in many cases come from that. That has been supported by the state for, we have an account there. SMERLA is looking at if they need to pick up the licensing costs for that. We have 1 Zoom license from the state that is likely to go away. So we already have 2 that we pay for ourselves. I don't think that there's going to be any immediate effects other than there may be a lot of training opportunities that the state is offering that we're not going to see. So we will be looking carefully at what this means. When we get grants.
Do you think the training or even these conferences may go to online opportunities?
In many cases, they were during the pandemic, so they might. And I don't anticipate them completely going away, especially since it's a way that people present new trends and learn quite a bit about what's happening right now. So yeah, that's certainly a possibility. It's nice to see people and meet in person, but if they don't, we don't.
Right, I mean, there's value to it, but if they can, it saves travel money and those kind of things, and to sit in front of a screen on Zoom, but you're getting the information.
I was reading that there are counties a lot more rural than we are across the country that rely quite a bit more on the MLS than we do.
That's
And
absolutely true. And um, so it really is going to have very profound effects. Maybe not as much for us, although that is where our mobile library came from. It is where we get our strategic plan money. It is where we get our facilities master study plan money. And you need an updated facilities master plan to apply for those capital grant dollars. Ours is current enough that it will do. You should do them every 5 years, and then it's going to be about 5 years old. I've already talked to the state about that. It will do for us, but you really should be looking every 5 years at the state of your buildings and what your priorities are for working on them and areas that could improve them for the public. Strategic plan, the first year I was here, we just did it in-house. We could do it that way, but you get a far better look at sort of cross library trends if you have a specialized vendor. So it's not like we can't do some of these things, but it's going to be a challenge in some areas.
Is there any impact to the Charlotte Hall upgrades?
No, that is county capital funding and also state capital funding. So there's no federal funding involved with that. The capital funds should stay in place because they're separate from the basic budget and operating funds. They're funded through bonds, for example. So currently we're not anticipating any loss of funding for the capital projects. But we will be presenting a budget to you that will not have that funding, and we'll just see what we get from the state of I'm sorry, from the county. Again, I'm anticipating it not being nearly as bad as we perhaps had anticipated. Questions on all of that? Well, we do have 2 board members coming up for renewal for their terms this year. Tressa, your term ends on June 30th. You are eligible for 1 more term. I have notified the county of that. They are going to make an announcement. So the way it works, for those of you who are not as familiar with it, as people do apply through the county process, they are going to be given a deadline of May 16th to apply. And the reason why is you will need the end of May to look at the applications and to winnow them down. In the past, we have typically had interviews for the position. Before the pandemic, in many cases, those interviews were conducted live and with a quorum present. So what we would have to do, even with an online session, is create a public session and then close it, because you would be meeting as a quorum, and you have to do that anytime you have a meeting as a board. So as I say, those were conducted in person prior to the pandemic, and it's something you might want to consider this time around. You get a good look at folks that way. So you will have the final 2 weeks of May then to choose 3 candidates, assuming we have at least 3 applications. If we only get 2 or whatever, you only put forward what comes forward. The county commissioners may select from the names you put forward, but may not add their own.
But we don't have to have a quorum to go through. Are you talking about the interview process, the initial?
I would suggest a quorum in an interview
I mean, I
process.
didn't have one, I had 3.
I'm aware of that, and I think that's very problematic. I think that you should try to arrange times where most of you can be present for these interviews.
Do we have a written policy on this, on how to do interviews?
I don't think you do, but I do think that you should probably consider having a quorum at least for these interviews. It's difficult to have a full sense of who you have if you don't have at least a majority of the board.
Is there a deadline when we have to go to the commissioners with our
Yes,
3
early
names?
June.
Okay, because the last 2 weeks of May includes Memorial Day weekend, and that could be a challenging window of time for a preliminary review and then interviews. Can we move the application deadline up earlier than May 16th?
I can let the county know that if you'd like to do that. I don't think that it will be a problem.
That's a
It's
lot
just
to do in 2
question
weeks.
Of getting folks in. Now, we are allowed to go out and talk to people. So if you know somebody you would like to be on the board, please say, hey, wouldn't you like to consider application? You do apply online with the county. If you search on your favorite search engine, St. Mary's County Boards and Commissions, the site will come up.
Avoiding.
The last board member, Michael Dunn, I thought was you. Didn't you have your term renewed? in
Yes,
20
Michael is the most recent one, and his was renewed.
Did you go through a quorum interview process? I don't remember any of that.
I don't think we
Don't
did
believe so.
interviews.
I thought
no.
they asked you if you wanted to serve again, and you said yes.
We had 3 applicants that time when Michael, we reviewed their applications here in the board, well, it was at Leonardtown in the board meeting, and looked at them and said Michael was clearly the most qualified. So because of previous experience. And I think we moved, that's what I remember, is that we moved forward with just,
Yeah, but
And we
three
would do
names were
a-
put forward, yeah.
yes.
Would we do a closed meeting? Because then we're talking about individuals.
You do a closed meeting, it's considered
Yeah.
personnel.
I think
Maybe I
that's
just
what we
remember.
did. And then you left, I think, and
Yeah,
we
yeah,
looked
yeah.
at all of the different,
Yeah, but there was not an interview.
right, there was not an interview.
Anyone
There were
else.
only 3 applicants, and we've got to
only.
put them all forward, but then you can prioritize. Now, remember that the commissioners do not have to choose your first choice.
If we have scheduling problems to get a quorum, would we be okay if we created a committee to do the interviewing? Committee being less than a quorum, and then reporting back in a closed session?
I don't think so.
Don't have any rules saying we can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think either the manual or we have an agreement, an MOU with the county.
We have an MOU with
And
the
I
county.
believe it says the board forwards 3 names.
It does.
So if I was to read into that, I would say that would take a vote. If we're gonna forward 3 names at some point,
Mhm.
even if we had a committee and the committee brought forward 3 names, then we would have to vote, yes, we agree with these 3 names. And again, that might have to be closed if you're gonna,
That's what we did
It
before.
has to be closed.
how we
because
did it
these are-
before.
This is a
People.
personnel issue.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to release the names of people who apply. That is considered to be as if they were seeking employment. So,
so that may
Um,
be where we had less than a quorum as a committee, but then as a quorum for the final vote
Which would be in closed session.
to be in closed
it will
session.
be in
I
closed
don't-
session, yes.
But I don't think we did interviews with Michael's appointee. We talked about it and determined that we didn't need to, I think, is what I remember.
I think that's accurate.
Yeah. Michael, if we receive 3,
Mhm.
do we have to submit all 3? If
By
someone
our MOU, we
is,
have to submit 3 names if at least 3 people apply.
okay, thank you.
You cannot, if somebody applies, if we have 3 applicants, you couldn't exclude one. You could ask for more applicants.
Hmm.
But the other thing, of course, is the county commissioners are not required to select any of the 3 you send forward. They could leave a position vacant. In that case, the person who is currently serving may continue on, or the position remain vacant. But if you send 3 names, they're going to choose one. But we do have to send 3 if at least 3 people apply. If one person applies, you send the 1 name. You might opt to say we want to hold off and revisit this. That's something you could also do, but I think that you're probably not going to have any trouble getting applicants in.
Are we okay in our end of term dates that we don't have a massive exodus at any one time?
Yes, there is. This is an unusual year in that you've got 2 in 1 year, but there's no time where there will be one time when 2 people will be up for consideration at the same time. That's about 2 years from now in December. Yeah, it's Judith and Sharon, but you will both be eligible for reappointment. Now, when that happens, because there's 2 slots, you've got to put 3 names forward for each one if you have that many applicants.
We could put up 6 names if there's 2 of it, up to 6 names. If we have them.
If we've got them, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, 3 of us came in at once, but that was because somebody left a term early,
yeah.
which
mhm.
was really unusual, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so, just letting you know that's happening. So what day would you like to have as a deadline for application? And I need to get that arranged very quickly here.
Mm. Mhm.
You know, so if you had it in early June, you'd be okay, but they like it in plenty of time to consider, and they don't actually vote, I think, until, the middle of June.
I would say May 5th.
Yeah, because our meeting is on May 9th, and so
Mhm.
perhaps we could even have a closed session after our regular meeting for some preliminary conversations about the applicants.
All right, I will ask the county if that's going to be an issue. I don't think it will be.
Thank you.
And you could then, as part of your regular meeting, just say we're now going to go into closed session to consider candidates.
Exactly.
At that time, you could decide whether or not you wish to do interviews. Now, the prior boards always wanted to, and we have a series of questions to ask that might indicate whether or not, let's just say somebody had values that you wish to see represented on the library board. So you might wish to, but that will be up to you. You could decide, no, these 3 candidates are who we like, put forward 3 names then, or you could then agree on a different process, but you could at least review what you perceive. Moving right ahead, because I think we can end without too much more ado. I did have one policy I wanted to take a look at. It's a fund balance policy. The history on this is that before I came here, the previous director brought forward a fund balance policy to the board, which included having at least 2 months of money that is unexpended and unencumbered, is not otherwise restricted. And we don't have such a policy. At the time, the board then just said, we're fine, we don't need one. Let's just keep going. I think in light of that, I am putting forward just something for your consideration, and it's in the packet. You'll see that it includes trying to hang on to about 1 month in the unexpended fund balance. And currently we've got just a bit more than that. It talks about when the fund balance might go up, which is basically after we have the report from the accountant, the profit and loss statement that the accountant and Belinda on, which is what is the basis of the audit. It can go up if we do not overspend in a year, remembering that this year, for example, we have $100,000 we're saying could come from the fund balance. So we haven't really overspent the budget if we spend 99,000 of that, but we will have dumped into the fund balance. But ideally, we will keep expenses almost right where they are without touching that money that has been earmarked from the fund balance. And so let's say we have $100 we didn't spend, that would send the fund balance up $100. If we dipped into the fund balance, it will go down a bit. It talks about what happens if, what we could spend this money on, and it's primarily for emergencies. And it talks about how to replenish it should it dip below 1 month. So I did provide that to you in the packet, so I hope you've had a chance to look at it, but I'm putting it forward for your consideration.
Michael, a question under target level, where it says so when you're when you're determining that when we finalize the budget, that is like setting it as 1 month, and then it says funds that exceed 2 months of operating expenses. That kind of scenario, would that happen like during the course of the year?
I really don't anticipate us ever seeing that. But yes, let's say there were some huge donation or something that came in to the library and, well, we don't have anything we're going to do with this. This just says that you, the board, could determine if the fund balance gets built up to a large degree, something else to do with it. It doesn't, money that won't be sitting there.
Like that lady's, what, $30,000 or $36,000 gift?
That went to the foundation. It is not a part of
Foundation,
this.
okay.
Do we need to vote on this?
Yes, this would be a policy for the library. I would like you to vote on it or vote it down. I just think that it would be nice if we had such a policy in place, which we currently do not.
Although not mentioned in here, could fund balances be used to invest in the OPEB account?
No.
Why not?
No, I'll take that back. Meaning if we have more than the requisite amount, yeah, then yes, you the board could determine to do something like that with it. It would depend, I think, on what your overall view of the situation is. Remember that we've got 7 people taking advantage of that OPEB. I view the library itself as a far more important consideration.
According to this,
We've got 7 retirees. That's all we've got. That's all that fund balance benefits.
so I
And
think
it doesn't even benefit them right now.
that's entirely aside from this policy, which says funds that exceed 2 months of operating expenses may be spent as recommended by the director and approved by the board of
Yeah,
trustees.
you could.
So if there was more than 2 in the unexpended fund balance, that could go to OPEB if it was recommended by the library director.
Yeah, it's kind of where do you want to see money go? But yes, it could.
Well, I think you've opened an interesting door for maybe the next meeting. If we have 7 people currently benefiting from the OPEB fund, maybe we ought to rethink how we're doing the OPEB fund.
Well, remember that they're not benefiting right now. Right now, they're benefiting from pay-go from the library. So we pay 85% and they pay 15% on a monthly basis. And the idea is that if that fund would build up to at least 75% of the amount of like $4.5 million at this point, you would start using the interest from it to pay the library share. So the idea is we build it up over time. That's what it was established for in any case.
Okay, so that's a pathway. I'm just suggesting that for the purposes of future discussion, there are other pathways we could take care of those 7 people.
I mean, I think we're moving a little far from this policy, and the OPEB piece, I feel like kind of flows from all the discussions we're having and continue to have. But just to bring it back to this fund balance, I have a question about under target level and recommended maximum in the 3rd paragraph. This policy puts some teeth in the fact the level will be set as 1 month of expenses in the fiscal year budget. And I'm wondering, are there any scenarios where we would not want to be required to budget 1 month of expenses as the unexpended fund balance?
It's
Yeah,
for,
I mean,
go ahead.
we have an extremely volatile situation right now that we didn't anticipate a year ago. So, generally, I find this really restrictive on the trustees. There's many restrictions on here, and I don't know why we would impose that on ourselves. And we basically have, an open rein here, for legitimate purposes to spend, the unassigned fund balance. And this is putting a lot of restrictions on that. And I think notice that sentence too is a little bit, I don't know how you would exactly define that. At what point do you say what's 1 month expenses? Month vary month to month and
It's
through
the
year,
average 1
and
month.
through the then you would say average, and then through the year, our budget can even vary somewhat. So,
The budget actually, that I create does an average of the monthly expenses for the year. So it averages that out on that last column. And that I think is the number that we would be
That is
referring
the
to.
number that we'd be
So it would
using.
count as that number for the whole year of the fiscal year. It wouldn't vary by month. It would be that fiscal year's monthly average.
so the average 1 month expense
Yes.
would be the wording.
Yeah,
So-
and that's, and we pointed that out to you earlier today when we looked at the budget. I said, remember this number.
But I don't know what that sentence means. Are we saying you'd want to set it at that level and not let it go above that level, or not let it go below
No,
that
it does
level?
not go below that level,
And again, so that's not clear.
but it
to
sets
me.
out the reasons why it could go below that number. Basically, imagine we suddenly get a lawsuit and we have $200,000 worth of expenses and you don't have any money sitting around. Imagine if we have a natural disaster. Eventually, you're going to get insurance money, but you might want to get something fixed ahead of time. I just want some money here. And I don't think 1 month is an unreasonable amount to have it as an emergency. I told you the county has 15% of their budget set aside in an unexpended fund balance. Our amount would be far higher than that. But I think that it would be a good idea for this board to establish the fact that the library may have an emergency expense. So
How
we-
is it a higher number if it's 1/12 of the year's budget?
No, it's 15% of their total budget. So 15% of our total budget, I can give you that number pretty quickly here, but it's a lot higher than 1 month worth.
And 1 month is about 454.
Yes, right now, that's roughly what it is.
No, I actually agree. I think 1 month is a good level to maintain, but I see it as the maximum level to maintain. Otherwise, as we are now, we have like 850. So we're not quite double, but
No,
close
we
to
don't have
double.
anything, no, we don't have that.
Okay, at the
We're-
end
we're
of
at
in the audit
491.
report,
No, don't look at the audit. Please,
excuse me,
please look
in the
at
audit
this number.
report, the auditors identified $850,000. It's an unassigned fund balance. That's the official number. That's the number
That is
that
not the
anybody would look at.
number.
And it's in the last budget hearing, Mike Hewitt's asking everybody, what's your unassigned fund balance? And he literally told one organization, go back and spend it.
Our number is
enough. So
$491,000.
There's an eye on this number. I think 1 month is a reasonable number to maintain, but I see it as the maximum level to maintain.
But the number right now is $491,806. That's the amount right now.
Right.
Don't look at the audit because it includes so many things that are not part of our operating budget.
Some of the audit is actual not money. It's
Resources.
So I guarantee you that we do not have $800,000. I barely have $800,000 total right now, and we just got our latest county drop, and I just paid a salary, and that will go down very quickly over the next month and a half, where I'll be again short money for the last salaries without being and possibly dipping into the fund balance again. We do not have $800,000 sitting anywhere.
Yeah, on
It
page
is a
10 of 10,
snapshot.
on page 10 of 10, it shows what the.
But it is a snapshot because the unassigned balance changes through time. So they're saying is at the end of the fiscal year, when we balanced our books, that's what was left.
Yeah, and it's going to be based on the profit and loss statement from the account.
Including assets, not actual money.
Yes. This,
Assets is included in that $800,000, not actual cash.
this is
We
the money
do
we
not
have
have,
on hand, yes.
do not have $800,000 in cash. And what you see on that budget of 400,000 is exactly what we have on hand
It's on page 10.
in cash in all my accounts. All of our accounts are on that budget. That's all the money I have.
What are the assets?
Furniture, equipment, computers, books.
What's a valuation of the,
Yes.
They're also including, in some cases, money that might be owed to us. Looking at the library's total financial position, which incidentally includes fines from years ago that we'll never see. So I think that it's The audit's not the place to look for what our unexpended fund balance is.
So the amount on page 10 is merely if we had to write a check at that moment.
Yes, if we had to write a check that moment, we could today write it for $491,806. And then we couldn't pay any bills for a long time, but we could do that.
Okay, but somebody help me out here. I was a history major, so I'm a little behind the curve on this. We come up with a new budget. We haven't spent a dime, but there's the numbers. Why are we not taking one, that's an operating budget, why are we not taking as sequestering 1/12 of that? That's 1 month.
Because we don't have the money.
Any money.
We don't have it from the beginning,
They don't give
That's
it to
true,
us
but you
upfront.
have leftover from last year.
which is,
It's sitting there in the MLJIP again. It is sequestered, if you will. That's what this fund is.
MLGIP is the money that we have. At the beginning of the year, the only money that we can put, that we can set aside is what's left. Don't even know until October. And as you know, from this year, it was $8,000. That's how much we had left over from this past fiscal year. So I don't have money to sequester.
Well,
What we have is the MLG already sequestered.
Well, here's where I'm coming up against the stone wall. If that's the case, how do we ever get to the point of sequestering 1 month's average operating?
Already have it.
It's
That is
sitting
the
here.
MLGIP account. It is the money sitting in our account. It's $400,000 that built up over, it was there when I started, it was built up over time. That is what we have. That is the fund balance. So we don't have another 400,000 at the beginning of every fiscal year to sequester. So what
Does that equal 1/12 of the proposed budget roughly?
usually approximately, and like I said, I
About
have
that, yeah.
to create the budget, figure out what that 1/12 is. It's what we have. So our goal is 1/12 of the budget. We may not meet. It might not. What we have is 400 plus $1,000. And if our create a budget next year more, we won't have it. So what?
We'll have the profit and loss statement that we'll be using to see how much we spent either over or under the targeted amount for this year's budget. And then we can say, all right, that would be money that's either extra or no, we dipped into the fund balance. So currently we could dip into the fund balance about, call it, $35,000 and still have 1 month left.
But we've budgeted to dip into it by $100,000.
So I think what I'm understanding with this policy, in addition to what we have historically, we're saying right now, we have about 1 month set aside.
Exactly.
This policy says that's our target, 1 month set aside. This policy then says if by some miracle you end up with utilities costing less and you end up with more than 2 months set aside, then you come back to the board and say, let's take the overage of the 2 months and go spend it. So this target level and recommended maximum says we already have 1 month. We want to maintain 1 month. The budget, the recommended budget is that this is that set for the following fiscal year is the recommended budget is we don't dip into that at all if we can avoid it. If we go over 2 months, that's additional, we're counting that as additional money. So we want to, the target level is between 1 and 2 months, which right now we have 1. If it goes over 2, that's where we have what we'd consider additional. But anything that's between 1 and 2, we'd want to continue to save and maintain.
Like this current month,
Right,
we happen to have 37 more than 1 month expense.
right.
And this is what we're doing now, correct?
This is what, it's just codifying what we're doing
This
now
is
and
just putting in
saying,
writing what we're already practicing.
we're already practicing this. Yes, it just says that we're gonna have that money there if we need it.
So it's not changing anything that we're doing already.
No, it is not.
So do we want to add the word average on line 3, section 3 of under target level and recommended maximum? The third paragraph, do we want to add average expenses in the fiscal year?
I would say yes, I think that clarifies. Can I also get clarification on this section that says use of funds? Is this talking about the exceeding 2 months use of funds, or is this giving parameters on dipping into the 1 month?
It is giving recommendations on what to do in case of an emergency if we had to dip into the 1 month.
Okay,
And then there's a section there that talks about if we do that, plans for getting back to 1 month. And the primary way to do that would be for the future budget to be adjusted.
Are we limiting ourselves by only identifying 6 possible uses of these funds? What if we wanted to use the funds for something else? This policy would prohibit us from doing that?
It
I think as
also-
long as you said this should be an emergency use, you could cover that.
if you added such as one-time
And
expenditures.
also limited to only recommendations by the director.
That's
To your
true.
point, the trustees are not limited to spending money to what's recommended by the director. So it limits-
Actually,
That
in
limits
Maryland-
the power of the board.
In Maryland code, the budget, for example, is recommended by the director and approved by the trustees. This is well in line within Maryland code.
But ultimately, the board is responsible for the financial management of the library. That is our ultimate responsibility. And I see this as
Typically,
limiting our, in case there was a strong disagreement between board and director, it would limit the board to what only spending the director recommends. And that's my concern. We may see,
That's what we
another
do
ma-
now. The director is who is responsible for the budget. And he makes recommendations on how that money is spent, and then we as a board approve or disapprove his recommendations. That's what we do now.
no, the board is responsible for the budget. We approve our budget and we approve any changes to the budget when we reprogram money.
but it's based on my recommendation, and that's right in Maryland code.
Not required to be. We're not
It's in
required.
Maryland code. It's the law.
But the
I don't think
approval
so.
is not required to be recommending X.
Look at, if you look at Maryland code, it says the director will present a budget and it will be approved by the trustees.
Does not say it will be approved as presented.
No.
It does not, but it does say be approved by the trustees. I think that
And we make.
this, I think, I
reprogrammings.
like the balance that this gives.
It makes we do reprogrammings. And we can vote yes or no on
You do
reprogrammings.
pre-programming based on our recommendations.
We
You
can
never
vote
just do
no,
it.
but we can vote yes or no on it. And we could. I mean, there's nothing in the law that says we can't.
So if I come up with something you don't like, it's say no.
You can always vote yes or no.
But
It
you
doesn't
can-
limit anything. It's what we do now. He
Well, it
recommends
does.
and we vote yea or nay.
It does. It limits to only what the director recommends.
So
And
I
if you have a
think,
situation where the board and director are not in alignment, that ties the board's hands.
so I think the way I read this and how it would work practically and how we tend to run things here is that the director brings recommendations. We have a discussion and we say, we actually think these are better or bigger or something priorities. We can vote no, and then the director would need to come back with a new recommendation that will be passed. So I think that this does encompass that. And it's not, it's the spent as recommended by the director and approved, that approval inherently says there's going to be some back and forth where the recommendations might change based on the approval that is not granted.
Maybe the hangup is the inclusion of the word approval. How about voted upon?
That is the
I think that's the
approval
same.
is voted upon.
Yeah, I agree.
Approval is a concrete word. There's no, you don't like it.
That's what the voting's for.
That's what voting is for.
You know what I mean? Like, Michael
That's
comes,
not
there's,
what this
Uh,
says.
I think it does.
It
I think
says
it does.
as recommended by the library director and approved by the board. So I find that reads we can vote on only what is recommended by the director,
That's what we
as
do
recommended.
now.
Yeah.
As Sharon explained, we asked the director to make changes.
Yes, and he can make
So
changes during our discussion when we vote.
I just find this, I think this is a sea change for us. I think this is a really significant policy and we should take our time to go through this and think through the ramifications and the steps and the wording. Some of the wording really should be finessed here a little bit to be a little more clear. It's not something I would rush into.
And ask for a vote
approving.
for it one way or another.
But if it says and approved
Mhm,
by the Board of Library Trustees, so I agree, we can approve or disapprove it,
mhm, mhm.
and we can make recommendations based on what the director has brought forth to us.
But I think,
We can make recommendations.
well, so we make verbal recommendations, but I think we do not bring written like, it is not our job to bring a written recommendation.
Right.
So, and I think that's what's stated here, is it's the job of the director to bring a written recommendation, and then our job to approve it or disapprove it, at which point the director has additional information to bring back some new recommendation.
Voted on.
Yes, well, that's what approval means for a board.
But you don't have to approve.
Say just
Right, yeah.
It says.
Well,
and
because,
Yeah.
because it's talking about the spending of it, the disapproval is the modus tollens version of this from a logic perspective. It's if it's not approved, you're not gonna spend it. So this is logically, this has all the words we need, I believe.
Well, we can put that in parentheses under after approved, and we can put voted on.
It doesn't, I
That
think,
would include, that says the same thing.
yeah, it says the same thing. If you vote yes, you approve it. If you vote nay, you don't approve it.
If you said after approval by the Board of Trustees, does that help clarify?
To me, the language of recommended by the director and approved by the trustees is just fine. It's plain English. I think on its face, it shows that it is a two-step process. You know, as a board, we do not come up with ideas from whole cloth. We don't start with a blank spreadsheet to make a budget. Michael brings us something, we yell about it, we vote, right? It's worked very well for us over the years. To me, I think if we are good with setting 1 month of expenses as the amount of the unexpended fund that we want to have, and we're good with that, I'm okay with it. My only concern about this policy draft is really under the use of funds and the one-time and the other uses. Perhaps adding language, one-time expenditures, the fund may be used for non-recurring expenses such as,
Yeah.
I
colon,
like that too.
Yeah.
and then to say other uses may include colon,
Other uses such as,
just to make sure that we're not limiting it to these bullet points, but that, you know, if other circumstances come up that the bill, they are also applicable.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to add such as, because there could be an emergency we don't foresee. Is that what you're getting at?
I was trying to see a lot of them, but.
So would you be using such as in both sections, the one-time expenditures and other uses such as?
I would add
Mhm.
such as for the first, and then other uses may include. So it's not an exclusive list.
What if it says such as, but not limited to?
sure,
That works.
Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of encompass that whole thing without having to add all kind of bullets?
or you could just say not limited to. No, I think such as but not limited to is fine.
Do other organizations have a policy like this in the county?
I don't know about in
Okay.
the county, but other libraries do.
I'd be interested if there are any in the county that we could compare this to. So we're hitting the mark. We're not an outlier in the county.
May I please call for a vote for this? I get
Yeah,
a vote.
I answer Judith really quickly. No one else, county departments don't have fund balances because their money is the county's money. So
The county has.
the
a
county fund
policy.
balance covers all of the county
The county has
departments.
a policy.
So
It's
the
15%.
only other ones is maybe the health department, except that they're kind of a state
The health
State Department.
is a state, so we have to follow.
Right, so we are an outlier.
So the school board has an unassigned fund balance. The superintendent has spoken about it.
And the
And
school board,
I
the school
think-
board's different. They are an outlier.
Might be wrong, but I think the sheriff's office, and some others do. I don't know why they wouldn't, why any organization with a budget wouldn't have a fund balance.
County money, so they only get what the county gives them, period. Like,
So the school board does have an unassigned fund balance.
they
So
are
my question is,
different.
Do they have a policy on it?
Yeah, school boards.
I think this policy makes sense to put in place. It's just putting in writing the practice that we're already doing. So I'm gonna ask if, someone wants to make a motion to approve this as amended.
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Opposed? 5-4, so motion passes.
Thank you so much. Now, we have a couple of things upcoming, and probably the most important one, as we've already talked about, is in fact on April 22nd at Leonardtown High School. The budget public comment period closes on April 29th, and we will have our request in. On May 6th and 13th are the final budget hearings, and on May 20th, the final budget approval. So we will know on May 20th exactly where we stand, and we will present a budget to you in June based on that. The Friends of the Library book sale is May 16th through 18th. 16th of Friday is for members, and the remaining 2 days are general, and we are obviously hoping for a huge turnout by the public to buy lots and lots and lots of books. I have some certificates for you for your service on the board, and I thank you for that.
So we do have one more piece of board business.
Okay, go ahead.
We have an investment policy statement that we discussed last time. John took it back and removed removed the italics that I asked him to. It is the same document that we reviewed last time. It requires all of our signatures. And it's just the statement of how the OPEB funds are invested, like we had all agreed on that before. So, I don't think we need to vote on it again. Do we need to vote on it again? It just.
I would think if the language is not changed, then
I'm gonna have this here. We all need to sign it. That's our last piece of board business.
Can I bring up a very small new trustee business? I would like to recommend permanently we move the celebrations right after approval of the agenda, because that I think would be, because we often have guests who would like to leave. So if I can make a motion to move the celebrations permanently to right after the approval of the agenda.
I don't know you need to vote on that. I will happily do that. And in fact, they used to be the very first thing.
Yeah.
We will absolutely move them up.
Sharon, I already moved next month's up.
Thank you.
We could
And I
even
would
move
like-
them right below opening the meeting before we approve the agenda.
Sure.
And I would like to ask, and I don't know who has the count, are we 100% on our, what's it called, conflict of interest statements?
Yeah.
We have 100%. Excellent.
You were gonna check, I think, Belinda, and make sure all 7 were into you.
I forgot to check. I apologize, but I can do that. I will.
You signed last month?
Yes.
Some of us hadn't
Yes.
signed them, so I think I gave Belinda 2 more last month.
Yeah,
And we just want to make sure we
Have
have
them.
all 7.
Yes.
You do?
Double check and make sure I have everybody's and nobody was missing. But I think I had all 7.
So I had to go back. So on this investment policy statement, I'm looking in the minutes. We voted on this last time and approved it. Does anybody see it in the minutes?
Wasn't it in?
We did take a
Oh,
vote. No, just to approve it, except for the italics.
That may have been 2 months ago.
I was thinking it was 2 months
It
ago.
must've been 2 months ago.
Yeah. Do you have?
Only thing was the
Okay.
quotation marks. The body had already been.
That's the thing I was looking to make sure we have. Okay. This is what we're all signing.
So is there any other new trustee business? So at this point, I'd like to entertain, if we have a motion to end our meeting,
So moved.
second,
I second.
all in favor?